All right, we're live. Just wait for some folks to come in here. Says we have 2 people watching at the moment. If you guys can hear me, just put number 1 in the comments. Make sure the audio is good. Hey, Loretta. Thanks for that. So we're a few minutes early. I'm just going to hold tight till 4 o'clock here. Oh, now we have 10 people. Nice. All right, so hey, Kim and Search Mercs. Thanks for joining. If you guys have any questions right before the little presentation here, you can go ahead and type those. What I'm going to do is go through the presentation, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. I might do some questions in the middle of this, but we'll see how it flows. Yeah, Loretta, it is surprising. Not many people know about COP construction. Not yet, anyway. It's grown. Since I started doing this, it's definitely grown in popularity, but it's still a very minority of folks who really know what it is. And then people who do know about it or hear about it, sometimes they get the wrong impression of it, that it's not like a high standard building material, but it actually is, just has to be used right. Can everybody hear me still? Just type number 1 if you can hear me, number 2 if you can't, and we'll get started here in just about 2 minutes. I'm going to bring my cat in. Welcome in, everybody. Looks like we got 14 people. That's pretty good. This is the first presentation I've done like this. So there might be some technical issues, but I think I've got this figured out pretty well. Okay, so let me give this a go. Can you all see the natural plasters and finishes and the logo up top? I just want to make sure the PowerPoint's showing. Yes, okay, thanks. All right, so this is just going to be a really casual presentation, and then I'll do a question and answer session at the end. So we're going to talk about natural plasters and finishes. So what are natural finishes? So natural finishes are always vapor permeable, and that means that water can pass in and out. So this is really important for any kind of natural home, especially a cob home, straw bale home, straw clay home, anything like that, because you need to make sure that water can pass in and out of the walls and it doesn't build up inside the walls. So any natural finish is going to be moisture buffering, and that means it can buffer moisture in and out of the walls. So there's a problem with cob house renovations in the UK. What they do is they'll use like a synthetic paint or a cement-based stucco on the cob walls, and what happens is water moisture builds up behind that stucco layer and the paint, and it actually saturates the cob wall, and the residents don't know it until it's too late and the walls can collapse. So it's kind of mandatory to use natural finishes on any kind of cob wall or natural fiber wall so they don't get damaged. Natural finishes are also non-toxic, so this is great for any residents who have indoor allergies or chemical sensitivities. There are no toxic ingredients in these natural finishes, and they're made with abundant natural ingredients. So they're really easy to make and to acquire. Okay, earthen plaster. So there's two types of natural plasters. There's earthen plaster and there's lime plaster. So earthen plaster, the main ingredient is just subsoil. So just your common soil beneath the topsoil. And in the subsoil, that's where you get your clay. So clay is the binder in earthen plasters, and then you have your aggregates or your sand. So in case of plasters, you want to use really fine sand um, because you want to get a really smooth finish on the plaster. And then you can optionally put straw into the plaster and then water to get it to the right consistency. And then the mixing and the application is pretty standard for any regular plaster. Usually it's applied with a steel trowel. You can use drywall knives. Some people even apply it with their hands. So application is an art form in itself and can be done in several different ways, but traditionally is done with a steel trowel. And earth plaster is usually applied 2 to 3 coats for a wall. For a cob wall, you really only need 2 coats because the cob wall is already counts as a rough coat. So here's some pictures and examples of earthen plaster. So you can see the different colors, the different textures. Here in the bottom left, I'm making some the soil portion. For earth plaster, what you do is you take your soil and you soak it, usually for at least a couple days, sometimes a week or more. And then what I do is I whip it up with my handheld mortar mixer in a bucket, just like this. And it comes out, it's like almost like a chocolate mousse at that point. And then what I do is I sift it through a bug screen. So then it comes out like a chocolate mousse once it's sifted through the bug screen. And then what you do is you mix that with the sand and the straw, and then just enough water to get it to the right consistency. And then you apply it to the walls. Here's some more earth plaster. You can actually color earth plaster different colors. The only trouble with that is you have to overcome the natural pigment of the soil. So typically earth plaster is the same color as the soil. Now, if you want to color your plaster, I'd recommend using lime plaster. So lime plaster is a base white, which you see in this picture. That's the natural color for lime plaster. And you can add any natural pigments to that. So you can make it pretty much any color you want. And lime plaster is a combination of lime, which is a powdered lime, and then your aggregate or your sand. So lime plaster is actually predominantly sand, and then the lime is added as a binder. There's typically no straw or fiber. Some people use animal hair, but it's not necessary. And then, of course, you can add your pigments. And the mixing and application is exactly the same as with earth plaster. And again, it's 2 to 3 coats typically. There's also something called tadelakt. Tadelakt is made of lime plaster, just the same, except there's an additional component. So during the application process, as the lime plaster is drying on the finish coat, you're going to apply an olive oil soap and you're going to polish it into the lime plaster. And what that does is it makes the lime plaster have a shiny, smooth finish, and it's waterproof. So this technique comes from Morocco. It's pretty old technique. They used to use it in palaces and bathhouses and such. It's a challenging technique, so I recommend starting with small projects first. And here, more pictures of lime plaster. Again, you'll see predominantly white, but that's just usually what I do. Like you can see down in the left-hand corner, there's a blue. We made a blue that time, so they can be any color. And you'll see here the tools they're using. This square block here to hold the plaster on, that's called a hawk. And then you have trowels and drywall knives. And let me let my cat outside. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so next is natural paints. Natural paints are also non-toxic and vapor permeable. And I recommend these for any cob structure or natural fiber or straw structure. I like milk paint. That's what I use predominantly. And the ingredients, milk casein, protein for the milk paints, natural minerals and clays and pigments. And then there's also natural oils and beeswax. So you can actually do paints, and then you can put natural oils on top of that too, like tung oil or linseed oil. So you can do combinations of plaster and paint and oils. And when to apply. The natural paints pretty much always go on top of plaster. So you wouldn't really put the paint directly onto the cob wall, like the raw cob wall. It wouldn't really get very far that way. So you would plaster it first and then paint it. And here's a couple examples of paints. See the blue and the green door. So where can natural finishes be applied? On any natural wall system, whether that's an earthen wall system or a straw or hemp wall. They can be applied to any conventional stick frame wall, any renovation of an old home or even a new home, pretty much anywhere. And you'll notice the photos here. This is my straw clay tiny house. You'll notice the difference between no plaster and lime plaster. So retrofitting a conventional home with natural plasters and paints. This is actually really easy. So all you have to do is strip the walls down to the studs. Usually the walls are made with 2x4s. And you're going to apply these horizontal wood lath slats. And these are just thin little pieces of wood. They're nothing special. This is what they used to use on homes, pretty much all homes, and they would plaster the walls. They don't do it anymore. They have drywall, but you can get these. You can get these lath slats pretty easily, and you just tack them to the studs, and then at that point you just apply your plaster. So between each lath slat, you want to have the width of the end of your index finger should fit between each lath, because you don't want to have the space too wide or too thin. Because you'll see over here, the plaster kind of goes through the middle and hooks down around the backside. That's how the plaster sticks. Okay, so that's the gist on natural plasters and paints. Let me just go into this real quick. For those who want to learn more, I have the Natural Building Academy, and I'm actually going to teach you the exact methods for mixing and application with natural plasters and paints in there. So this class is for anybody who wants to take things to the next level with their building, whether it's natural building or even conventional building. There's a focus on cob and straw clay, natural plasters and paints, and how to get permits and such. And you get my Cob Building Academy. That's really where we go into the plasters and the finishes and the straw clay. What's really cool about this, though, is the virtual workshops. So instead of having to travel, you can actually kind of experience the workshops online. It's not exactly the same as being there in person, but you get to see like 6 whole classes with me here this summer, and then we'll do Q&A calls each month. And here's some pictures of my little homes in the process, and some student projects from the past couple of years. You notice the earth plasters and the lime plasters. And again, this academy is for pretty much anybody wanting to do a new build, natural build, or a remodel. And if you want more information on that, I've got a 7-day free trial to the school, and you can follow that link. So at this point, let's get into Q&A. So I haven't checked any of the comments yet. So I can go backtrack. There's quite a number. Or if you guys just go ahead and put your questions again. Hey, Helen. Thanks for your comment. Yeah, if you have a mud and brick house, these plasters and finishes will absolutely work for that. And in Bulgaria, you say that maybe there's a tradition of it being used there too. That might be interesting to find out more about. Hey, Steve. Good to see you. Glad you could make it. So putting these plasters on painted walls. Okay. So like, for example, if you don't want to take the drywall off the wall all the way down to the stud, you can put natural paints just directly onto the drywall. If you want to put plaster onto the drywall, it's best to put a wire lath onto the drywall face. So that's basically like a metal mesh, and that gives grip for the plaster. So they actually sell what's called plaster lath, and it's just a metal mesh that you attach to the side of whatever wall, and then you put your plaster on top of that. Kim, that's a great question. So what's the best lime to use for cob walls? Okay, so I didn't touch on this. This is important though. So um, the lime that you want to use for plaster is different from agricultural lime. Agricultural lime has different chemical makeups from what's known as builder's lime. So builder's lime is really what you want to use for any kind of plaster application. Um, So I like to use type S lime, and that's one of the most common types of limes you can acquire here in the US. There's also natural hydraulic lime or NHL lime. Um, there's a variety of types of NHL lime. I think it's the NHL 3.5 that's usually used for plaster. These can be ordered online too. Just be aware that shipping costs are pretty high because it's usually a 50-pound bag. But yeah, make sure you don't use agricultural lime. I've tested it once with a particular agricultural lime and it did work, at least so far, but I don't recommend it if you can acquire the builder's lime. So again, type S lime or NHL lime. Let me go back up here and look for questions. Okay, Loretta, up here, your question. How thick should cob walls be in West Virginia? Well, in West Virginia, a cob wall, I would do between 18 to 24 inches wide, but that's typical. That's pretty standard. Um, if you're doing straw clay or a fiber insulation wall, I would do at least 9 inches wide. Kim, yeah, you can use type S for inside and outside. And that's what I pretty much always do. Type S lime you can also use for tadelakt. Casey, yeah. Getting the consistency with the pigment is just a matter of measuring accurately as you can. Because yeah, I can see the issue. If one day you're putting in so much pigment and then the next day you maybe put in a little more or a little less, that can change the color. So it's just all about measuring everything out. All right, we still got 38 people. I appreciate you all being here. Um, this is really good for the first broadcast. I can take um, lots more questions if you guys have them. Good to hear, Casey. Thanks. If you guys have recommendations for another topic too, let me know. Seems like a lot of people are interested in the plasters and finishes, though. Going back up here. So you ask, what are some easy to come by natural fibers for plaster aside from chopped straw? Chopped straw is definitely the easiest one to come by. Mm, it doesn't have to be straw necessarily. Straw is really good though because it doesn't degrade fast. That's why really it's used in cob. It has a high tensile strength and it doesn't break down fast. So if you can find another natural fiber like that, I don't see why you couldn't use it. Also for plaster, the chopped straw doesn't really add structural value to it. It's more for just textural looks. So um, You can kind of use whatever works with the plaster. Some people add, I think it's called mica fragments, like little sand fragments of mica. I think the shiny stuff, and it adds texture to the plaster. So plaster is all about creativity, or at least more so. So there's more room for creativity and experimenting with stuff. Actually, let me go back one of these pictures here if I can. Yeah. So this blue wall here, um, this was a cob wall, and then I think it was painted, and then it was oiled. So this is the first wall I've seen done like this. It turned out really nicely. So you can get creative. How tall can a cob house be? So technically, a cob house can be as tall as you want. I mean, most houses don't go over 2 to 3 stories anyway. So, I mean, if you go over 2 or 3 stories, then you're going to have a special case, and you really have to engineer it. But cob houses can go high. It's no problem. How many coats of lime plaster do you use? 2 to 3, usually. You can get by with one, but it's best to do at least two. Bradley Campbell, let me try to answer your question here. Yeah, so the concrete stucco traps moisture behind it, so you don't want to use that on a cob wall, especially. If you do have that on a cob wall, I would recommend tearing that off and then reapplying a vapor permeable natural plaster. Natural plasters do stick to concrete, though. Yes. Okay. Are there any building regulations building with cob? Yeah, there are. So at least here in the U.S., every state and county has their own building codes that they abide by, and so it's going to be kind of a special case for whatever county you're in. We have an official cob code here in the U.S. You can go to cobcode.org. You can read it there. Most counties have not accepted that version of the building code yet. So if you want to get permits, most of the time you still have to have an engineer. And I have an engineer. If anybody needs links, you can contact me for his info. Casey, let me answer your question. That's a good one. So plaster for things without roofs. Okay, so if you're in a desert or a very arid climate, you can plaster something like a structural cob thing and just leave it outside, and it's going to be fine because you don't have all the rainfall. Now, if you're in a temperate climate like me, I'm here in East Tennessee. We get lots of rain. We're right on the edge of a rainforest here, temperate rainforest. So what I do, and what I've done in Florida too, is if you want to build an earthen structure that's out under the elements, it's a good idea to stabilize the material. And basically, what that means is like you can make cob and you can add a portion of either lime or cement into that mixture. And that's what's going to stabilize it against weathering and moisture. So I have, for example, a big rammed earth wall outside. It's actually going to be a shower wall. Plus, it's just outside in the elements 24/7. And so I stabilized that rammed earth wall with um, cement. And so technically, it's really it's like earth cement at that point, soil cement or concrete, soil concrete, I guess I should say. But that's a way around it. I don't recommend stabilizing these materials if you're doing a home or a building because it takes away the vapor permeability. That's just for outdoor stuff, like decorative stuff. What was the clay wall painted with? Which clay wall? Hempcrete can be used. Yeah, hempcrete can be used the same way as all with all this. Okay, so does oiling a wall eliminate vapor permeability? Not if you use vapor permeable oils. So the tung oil or the linseed oil, make sure some of those are like really processed and they're not vapor permeable. So do your research. Go to that company, the Real Milk Paint Company. They sell the good stuff that's vapor permeable. That's what I use. Rogerio, is it possible to use natural plaster in wood frame houses on top of the plywood? Yeah, I've seen people plaster on top of the plywood. They apply the metal mesh or the metal lath directly to the plywood and then they plaster. However, I don't think I would do it that way. I think I would take the plywood off and apply those horizontal wood lath, the strips, and then plaster onto that. Oh, Sarah, I'm not really familiar with the cob builders in Canada, especially Ontario. I know there's a lot in British Columbia. I don't even remember their names though. But I think, I mean, if they're well known, you could probably do a Google search on them. I'm sorry, I just don't really know. Loretta, yeah, colored pigments are used for plasters and for paints if you want. Okay, so let's see. Let me take another one or two questions and then we'll wrap it up there. Yeah, Loretta, you could use bamboo. I'm guessing you mean like cutting the bamboo and using it as horizontal strap pieces like this. Another thing is wattle and daub. Like this wall here, this is a lot like a wattle and daub wall. You make like a lattice work with bamboo or sticks, and then you apply the plaster. It's pretty much the same as using the lath. Helen, no, you could use the natural paints on the what is it, the sheetrock. Yeah, no, I don't think that would cause any problem. I mean, if anything was going to cause a permeability problem, it would be your synthetic paints because those would trap moisture behind them. But the natural paints won't do that. So I think you're safe to use natural paints on that stuff. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate your time, and hope to see you guys in the academy if you want to learn more. I've also got the free school, which I think most of you are probably in there. You can go to school.com/cobhouse and you can get the cob building basics course there too. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. I'll see you next time.